Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you're new. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to my April wrap up. I can't believe we're already wrapping up April, but we are, and I'm pleased to say this is my best reading month yet in terms of a number as well as page count, but not in terms of ratings and books I enjoyed. So without further ado, let's hop into the stats and then we can discuss all my thoughts regarding all the books I read in the month of April. So like I said, I read a total of 9 books in the month of April. As I'm filming this, it is May 1st and I'm in the middle of my last book for the month of April, and I'm hoping to finish it today, and therefore I will count it in my April stat. So I read 9 books in the month of April. That spans across 3,404 pages. I'm very impressed with myself. I didn't rate one of them because it was a non-fiction memoir. The rest of my ratings were 5 3 stars, but varying in 3 stars and 3.5 stars. I'll get into more depth in that later. And 2 4 stars, although now sitting down and thinking about it, I think I'm going to bump one of those, which was a 4.5, up to a 5 star. So we're going to say it's 1 4 star and 1 5 star. 4 of those were audiobooks and 5 of them were physical. And I had 0 ebooks this month because in April, if you didn't know, I challenged myself to what I called the prompt challenge, where I picked a prompt out of my prompt jar and then I read a book related to that prompt before I could move on to the next prompt. And the aim for this challenge was to read as many books off my physical TBR as possible to get the number down. I'm pleased to say that challenge was mostly a success, and therefore I didn't read any ebooks I didn't own. All of the books I read were off my physical TBR, bar 1, which was a non-fiction memoir. Therefore, 8 of those books were off my physical TBR. So happy with that number. And obviously, like I said, 1 was an audiobook, which was a non-fiction memoir, which I got off Scribd. That spans across 3 contemporaries, 3 romances, 2 fantasy, and like I keep saying, 1 non-fiction memoir, equaling to 7 adult and only 2 YA. So the number is getting more into adult and less into YA. If I hadn't have read and finished a series this month, it would have all been adult books. So those books were Adulting by Liz Kelly, The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armes, A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer, The Wrong End of the Table by Asa Salmon, The Party Crasher by Sophie Kinsella, All My Mothers by Joanna Glenn, Verity by Colin Hoover, and A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer. The first prompt I pulled in my prompt challenge was a 5-star prediction, so for that I picked The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, and sadly this wasn't a 5-star. This was one of my 3.5 stars of the month. It was just okay. I know. I am sad, and I said in my vlogs I might continue the series, and I just don't think I will because I have no draw to it anymore. I've read it, I've done it, I don't understand the hype, and I'm over it. This book, if you aren't aware and you're living under a rock, it basically follows our main character Zara and our other main character Rowan. Rowan is the grandson to a Walt Disney figure who owns a theme park and a major franchise, and when the grandfather passes away, he leaves in his will challenges for his 3 grandsons to complete in order for them to take over the company. This book follows the grandson Rowan, the other 2 books follow the other grandsons, and his task is to spend 6 months in Dreamland. I'll get onto my gripe in a minute, to kind of get it back to full capacity and to get it back on track. And therefore he hires Zara to help with like the re-theming, and a romance ensues from there. The major gripe I had for this, and I said to Mark I can get over it, but I just don't think I can. This sounds so snobby, but basically this book is an encapsulation basically of Walt Disney World, yet it's called Dreamland, referencing more Disneyland, and it was celebrating its 50th, it was set in Florida, like it really was saying, hey, I'm Walt Disney World, yet it was called Dreamland. Call it Dreamworld. Like, if you want to get into that particular area of franchises and you want to copy, say Dreamworld, or set it in California and it's celebrating its 100th. Like, that's the major thing. Other than that, I liked the characters. I never felt invested in the romance. I didn't get the whole kind of like stay there for 6 months and get it fixed. I don't know, I just never felt invested in the entirety of the plot. I did love the sexual tension, however it was very kind of insta-lovey. Within the first like 50 pages they're already kind of like getting each other's pants, so it was fine. I don't get the hype. I am sorry, but I didn't have a bad time reading it, so I gave it a 3.5. And then I moved on to my first audiobook of the month, and that was for the prompt to read a book shorter than my last read. Obviously, the other read was the fine print, which is like 450-ish pages. So I chose a book that had been on my TBR for years, like since 2021. Maybe even 2020, and that's Adulting by Liz Talley. This was a book gifted to me by Christy from Christy Reads for hitting monetization. This is how long I've had this book on my TBR for, and I actually ended up really enjoying this book. I gave it 3.5 stars, and this book basically follows a failed actress called Chase and a therapist called Olivia, and they kind of end up forming a really crucial bond to help Chase get back on track. It's kind of Chase's last opportunity to stay in the acting industry and not become kind of like someone that no one else thinks is worthy anymore, because she's had a lot of prison issues and drug abuse and all this sort of thing, and she's kind of on her last kind of hope. So her family hire Olivia, who is like a really well-known therapist that has a crash course in getting your life back on track. So Olivia takes Chase under her wing and tries to get Chase back on track. And what I loved most about this book is Chase's character growth from where she started to where she ended. I really enjoyed. I do have fond memories of reading this book. I did really enjoy it. I loved the characters, I loved the relationship, and I really enjoyed like the little subtlety of romance in this book as well, but not so much that it was romance fixes everything, because it doesn't, and it was Chase's personal journey, but there was a little bit of romance on the side, and it was a really cute read, and it dealt with some really hard topics such as drug abuse, suicide, and sexual abuse. So overall I gave it a 3.5 stars as well. The next prompt I pulled was Random Letter, and I got letter S. This was for my next audiobook. So I picked up The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Almes just because I knew that I would never gravitate towards reading it physically, because I tried reading this a couple of years ago and just couldn't get into it. I really hated the main characters. I found them so annoying when I read it physically. So I thought the only way I'm going to get through this book is if I listen to the audiobook, which was on Scribd. It was off my physical DVR, so win-win. And I ended up enjoying it more than the fine print. Yes, I know, because I was actually quite shocked. It took me a while, it took me ages to get into it, but then also it's like a 550 page book, so like, what do you expect? So it took me about 150 pages to get into it, but after that, I did really enjoy the romance. I thought it was really cute, and I was kind of pining for them by the end of it. But it's not a romance that I'm going to remember for ages. It was just a fun time while reading it, and I did enjoy the audiobook. And I did sometimes find that the enemies to lovers was kind of a little bit forced at moments within the story, but overall I had a fun time, so I gave it a 3 stars. I'm actually going to switch that round, so fine print 3 stars, Spanish Love Deception 3.5. Yeah, got that confused. Just putting it out there. I did enjoy the Spanish Love Deception more than the fine print, so 3 stars, 3.5. My next prompt pool was for my next physical book, and I got Continue a Series and Flip a Coin, and A Heart So Fierce and Broken got picked finally to continue this series, and I can't believe I held off for so long. I absolutely love this book. This book was so good. I read A Cursed Dark and Lonely in 2020 during my first round of the Magical Hobbathon, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Gave it 4.5 stars, and then I just kind of like never continued the series. I brought the rest of the series during Yauk in 2021, and it has been sat on my bookshelf ever since. So I'm so glad I did this prompt challenge, and I'm so glad it made me pick this book up, because I loved it maybe more than the first book. Absolutely adored the characters. I love the fact that this book didn't follow our main character from the first book, yet you still felt so invested in the overall story of this entire universe and the world. And I love the balance of world building and character, romance and relationships, because I'm not a fantasy reader, so I don't want anything that's too intense in terms of political intrigue or world building, because it will just go over my head. This series is the perfect balance for me in terms of like, I love characters and I love character relationships and I love character growth, which is why I gravitate towards romance and contemporary. And yeah, it was the perfect balance for this in terms of like a fantasy setting, and I just absolutely adored it. I obviously can't say what this book is about because it'll spoil the first one, but the first one basically is a Beauty and the Beast retelling with our main character Harper, who gets transported into this fictional world of Beauty and the Beast to try and break the curse of the fantasy world of Emberfall. And then the second book carries on from there, and I love the fact that this book basically followed an entire adventure of a road trip, basically. I loved it. It was so good. Definitely prefer it to the first one, I think, just because of the characters and the little like romance in it, and I loved it so much. I read it within a day. I absolutely adored it. Yes, I'm currently reading the last one, so stay tuned. And then I know, shock, next physical book, I got Random Letter, and the random letter once again was S. So this time, instead of going for the title, I went for the author, and I picked The Party Crasher by Sophie Kinsella. And once again, this is one of the highest rated books I read this month. I gave it 4 stars. Absolutely loved this book. Thought it was so much fun. This book basically follows our main character, Effie, whose mother died when she was really young, so she's had a stepmother called Mimi since she was 3. And they've lived in this really wacky, fun house, very kind of like characteristic in terms of like the quirkiness to this house. And she has a brother and a sister, and they go back home every year once they've moved out to decorate a Christmas tree. And one Christmas, the father and stepmother say that they're breaking up, and they thought family was never going to be the same again. And then really quickly, the father ends up with a new girlfriend, and the new girlfriend decides to sell the house they've always loved and grown up in, and they have a house calling party. But Effie, because she doesn't get on with the dad's girlfriend and never tries to get on with her, she doesn't get invited. So she house crashes her own family's house calling party to her childhood home. It's like a really interesting, quirky concept, and I absolutely adored it. The family dynamics, chef's kiss, absolutely adored the relationship between the sister and the brother, and then the little romance that was in it. It was all just so balanced so perfectly between romance and family dynamic, and the humour. I haven't read a Sophie Kinsella book before, but I know that she's really known for humour, and this book is chef's kiss and humour. It's like the perfect amount of like, you're in a really silly situation right now because you're hiding from the rest of your family in your own home. Yeah, it doesn't feel like overboard silly. It's like the perfect tip of the weighing scales, like perfect. And I absolutely adored this book. Highly recommend it if you're interested in picking up. I then got my next audiobook, and because I was focusing on reading and getting rid of my books on my physical TBR, I got the prompt of Out of Comfort Zone, and this was the only one I can kind of think of that fitted the prompt for my audiobook. The audiobook was available to me on Scribd. So I picked this one, and it's out of my comfort zone because it's a very different story to what I'm kind of used to, even though it's very character driven. And this book basically follows our main character, Eva. You start the story off when she's 3 years old, and she starts school, and she starts to have questions when the first school assignment asked to give her a picture of when she was a baby, and everyone else brings in photos of themselves with their mothers, but her family can't give her this picture. She doesn't have any. So she starts this quest on finding out where she's really from, and you follow her from when she's 3 all the way up until she's like mid-20s, early 30s, and it's all about discovery of who her real family and mother are and where she comes from, because throughout her life she gets kind of like divvied out to lots of different mother figures, but none of them being her true mother. If I say more than that, I'll ruin the story, so it sounds very kind of like mundane, and it is. I didn't love this book, unfortunately, and I'm so glad I had the audiobook, otherwise I don't think I'd have got through it, and I definitely wouldn't have picked it up as soon as I did. It reminded me a lot of a non-fiction memoir, because it was very kind of like, I did this, and then I did that, and this is how I felt. And it was a very, very personal story. You kind of got a lot about Eva's life. Writing was very well done. Like, I did kind of feel a little bit connected to it by the end, because it was such a long book, and I did kind of tear up a little bit at the ending, because it was very heartwarming. But overall, I just sadly didn't love it, so I gave it a 3 stars. I also forgot to mention, in between A Heart So Fierce and Broken and The Party Crasher, I read the audiobook of the non-fiction memoir I mentioned earlier, which was The Wrong End of the Table by Asa Salman, which was a book about a American Arab woman growing up and being taken away from her family in Syria and taken to the United States. And obviously I didn't rate this book because I don't feel right sometimes rating non-fiction memoirs, because you are basically rating and judging someone's personal experience that they've gone through. So I didn't rate it, but I didn't love it. It was only like a 3-hour audiobook anyway, but because I don't know about this person outside of this book, when she really went into depth about her like relationships and her career, I just didn't really feel invested. I didn't really care so much, but there was some really good, interesting topics discussed, such as when 9/11 happened and the way the Muslim culture kind of got affected, and there was a good conversation about that. So I did come away from it learning a few things and having a new perspective, but unfortunately I couldn't really recommend this book because I don't feel like you got enough out of it, especially if you don't know the person who wrote the book prior to reading it. I then got good first sentence and one-word title for my next physical book. So I read Verity because the first sentence was very gripping indeed. It is, I hear the crack of his skull before the splattering of blood reaches me. And I have seen a lot of hype around this book. Two of my closest booktube besties have read this book and absolutely loved it. Rhiannon from The Welsh Reader and Chloe from Chloe Reads Books absolutely adore this book. So I was going in with some higher expectations than usual when it comes to Colin Hoover. I don't read many Colin Hoover anyway. This is only my second book. The first book I read was It Ends With Us, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. The ending was like, I had questions. This book basically follows our main character, Lowen, who gets hired to write the rest of a series for an author who's been in an accident and can't think for herself anymore. She's kind of paralysed and she just kind of like has to be cared for completely, so she can't finish writing this series that she started. So Lowen gets hired by the author's husband, and she has to move in to their home in order to get all the notes and all the kind of plot outlines and stuff that the author has already written for the rest of the series. However, when Lowen moves in, spooky things start to happen and it's kind of like a romantic suspense from there. I didn't find it as scary as I was kind of hoping it to be, and I wasn't really hooked until I was hooked. The last 150 pages I sat down and just read in one sitting. I couldn't put it down, but the rest of the book was just okay. So I gave it 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it, but I once again don't see the hype. I don't do well with hyped books. Just put it out there, if you're new to my channel, I don't tend to do well with hyped books, and I have to leave it ages to read hyped books so I don't get spoiled with the hype, because usually if I read a hyped book surrounding the time of the hype, I end up hating it. So I gave this book a 3.5 stars. The last 100 pages did it for me. I was so intrigued. I would love a sequel because the ending left on so many questions, but in like a good way. Like, it wasn't like an unsatisfying ending because it left with so many questions. It was like a really good ending because it had so many questions and you were just kind of like shook from the entire thing. So I enjoyed it. It was a 3.5 stars, but nothing incredibly special, and the hype kind of took it away from me a little bit, I think. So that was the last fully fleshed book I read. And then the books I'm currently in the middle of, because I've had a little bit of a slump kind of progressing and I didn't read anything in the last week of April until this bank holiday weekend, and I decided, right, I'm just going to read what I want. The challenge is over. I've completed the challenge in a way that I wanted to. I've read a lot of books off my physical TBR. I'm just going to read what I want. So of course I picked up the sequel to A Vow So Bold and Deadly. No, I picked up the sequel to Hearts of Fierce and Broken, A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer. This is the third and final book in the Cursed Dark and Lonely series, and I just need to know how it ends. I love the characters so much, and I wanted to have a series wrapped up. I wanted to know what happened, and I'm about halfway through and I'm hoping to finish the rest today. So I'm counting this as my April book. This is my 9th book of April and I will finish it today. I'm determined. It's on my to-do list. After I once I finish filming this video, I am sitting down and devouring the rest of this book. I'm not enjoying it as much as the other two books, sadly, especially because I'm halfway through. It's just a lot of like stationary situations and a lot more kind of like political intrigue than I would hope for, especially after the last two books being so good. I'm hoping it's still like a 4-star. I am enjoying it, just it's not as good as the other two. So yeah, we'll see how the ending goes, and stay tuned, because I'm sure I'll talk about it in one of my weekly vlogs, or it'll be on my Instagram or whatnot. So stay tuned and follow me on Instagram if you would like to stay updated with latest reading updates. I do tend to update quite a lot on there. And that's my April wrap up for you guys. I had such a good reading month in terms of like, I love the Party Crasher and I love the Hearts of Fierce and Broken, but other than that, they were all kind of like 3 to 3.5 star reads. Although I read the most pages I have so far this year in a month, and I've read the most amount of books so far in a month this year, the book quality wasn't kind of there. So in May, I'm kind of going to try and focus on quality over quantity, because I was kind of set myself the challenge this month and I wanted to make the vlogs kind of like jam-packed full of reading, so I kind of pushed myself to read a lot in a shorter space of time than I would usually. So May is kind of like taking it easy. I've got a few themed reading vlogs coming your way, so stay tuned for those, and other than that, I'm just kind of like taking the month as it comes. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a massive thumbs up and subscribe down below to see future content from me. I do anything from monthly wrap-ups, monthly TBRs, themed reading vlogs, weekly reading vlogs, fun little challenges like prompt to prompt. I actually want to bring it back because I had so much fun, so stay tuned for that. And I also host a readathon that I'm going to start planning this month for the month of October. Magical-Thon round 3 is coming back in October and I cannot wait to bring you round 3. So if you love books and you love Disney, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the announcement video for that, although it's a couple of months away. I just wanted to give a little bit plug here. So yeah, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Chat to me in the comments and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.